All right. Okay. So let me start. Okay. So last week was episode one of my research on Namyang with Kishan. And just a quick update. So we left it off that I went to Jinju and I went and visited the houses of the founders of the conglomerates, Samsung, Gold Star, and so on. And then I was very surprised that all lived on the same street and also all went to the same elementary school. So I was very curious. I was very curious as how could this happen? These major corporations, these major founders live in the same street in a small village in and become so successful. That evening, I had with dinner with Mayor Ill, and it was nice dinner. He was a very nice person, and we had a nice dinner. And then I asked him a lot of questions. I said, you are the mayor of a city that had the four largest corporations in Korea and also maybe in the world, and if you think about it from Asia. And he goes, yes, I know. And I said to him, I said, and also, you know that this potentially can be a huge historical finding. And he tells me that 2 years before, a Korean organization declared that Jinju is the founding city of K entrepreneurship or Korean entrepreneurship. And I did not know of this declaration that was made, but I thought it was very fascinating that actually a Korean organization makes this declaration. And my question was very simple. You know, why is it seems like the West or the globe around the world does not know about this, and that this is not a major finding and everybody knows about it. They know about Silicon Valley, they know about New York, they know about Milan fashion, they know about Egyptian pyramids, and they know about the Chinese wall, they know about the Great Wall, they know about all these things, but nobody knows this major finding that these companies, all founders, all lived on the same street and all went to the same elementary school. It just makes no sense. And and I asked, and he goes, well, we don't advertise a lot, but we're starting to talk about it. So then I realized that night, and it was kind of like karma, or it was meant to be that I and Kishan go to this town, and he shows me this because I am a researcher, I'm a professor. My role is to teach, to do education, to write papers and books and so on. So I realized that evening that I have to do this now. That's my job. It's meant to be that I come in and I am the person now that's going to take this knowledge that was shared with me very nicely, graciously, and show the West what it means and explain it to the West what this really means. An ambassador, if you may. So I didn't know where to start. Of course, you wonder why, how did this happen? So you have to do an investigation. And so I said the elementary school was the first thing that comes to my mind because they all went to the same school. Now you all went to school as well, elementary school and that. And all of us, everyone has a favorite teacher, and school, elementary school, kindergarten, high school, university. I can name two or three are my favorite teachers of all my time. They really changed the way I think, I believe. Aside from our parents, we have teachers. So I was wondering in the school, I said, maybe there's a teacher in the school, one person or two people as a teacher that taught these kids, there. And he said, no, no, there is no real teacher. And then I said, okay, maybe no teacher, maybe the curriculum. He goes, yeah, yeah, the curriculum that they learned. And then he mentions Namyang, right? He says Namyang. And I was like, oh, who is he? Right? And that's the first time ever I hear the word Namyang. And then later, and a couple of days later, they mentioned Joshik. And I got confused. I thought, who is Joshik now? Because we know Namyang. Who is this new person? And then they explained to me, Ambassador Ojun explained to me that Namyang Joshik is the pen name. You know, there's a name, a pen name. There's the same person, but another name. Okay? So I was like, so now I had to learn that in Korea that you can have one name and then a pen name. And this is the first time I hear of Namyang Joshik while I was in Jinju. Okay? This was the first time I was introduced to this scholar. And it reminds me of Adam Smith, it reminds me of Seneca, reminds me of Aristotle, Plato, you know, Shakespeare, and you know, all Charles Darwin. You know, this was the first time ever I hear of a name like this, and I'm like, I've never heard of him. I've heard of Confucius, I've heard of that, you know, all, but I've never heard of this person. But yet, he's famous. And I said, okay. So I said, that's easy. Then I should just go to my hotel, get online, and put in Namyang Joshik and find everything about him. Right? You know, books and articles and 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 papers and a website for him and all that stuff. I should find everything. I said, okay, this is a very easy mystery. I can solve it very fast. So I go to the hotel at night after a great dinner with the ambassador, with the mayor, and I put his name in. Zero. Zero results. Nothing. I type it many different ways. AI was not out yet, so there was no ChatGPT or anything like this. It was only Google. So I put his name zero. I put this zero. I put everything very little coming out. I see some stuff in Korean websites. I see nothing. So then I now it's like almost midnight in Jinju. So it was 12 or 1 p.m. in Washington. So I have a professor colleague of mine that teaches in my department. Okay. And so I email him, I call him. I say, listen, hey, I'm saying, who is Namyang Joshik? And he goes, why you ask? I said, who is he? I want to know. He goes, he was a Confucian scholar. Da, da, da. And his name, my colleague was Jung Ho Soo, a young professor. I said, why is there nothing online about him? And he goes, oh, well, you know, he's just Korean. I'm like, what do you mean he's just Korean? He is huge. He founded all these companies. He's in Jinju. He goes, what are you doing in Jinju? And he was surprised that I am there. It's like, what are you doing in Iowa or Idaho? You know, it's like, you know, what are you doing in the middle of the US or, you know, in a small town in Napoli or Sicily? What are you doing there? I'm like, I'm learning about him. He goes, I said, send me some articles. He goes, okay, I'll send you some articles. I'll translate you something. And I wake up in the morning and he said, I see an email from him with a couple of things written. So this is the first time I start reading about him. And I learned that he was born in 1501. Namyang Joshik was born in 1501, died in 1572. So he lived for 71 years. And he was born in the Joseon dynasty in Korea. I'm like, okay, so he's born in that Joseon dynasty, important dynasty, and he studied under the Confucian canon. Okay, so he was a scholar and studying under the Confucian canon. And my understanding of studying under the Confucian canon is that it takes about 10 to 15 years to study under it. Right? They're very organized, they're very structured, and you have to go through examination. to become part of the government to do it. Um, what I learned based on my research is that he did study under the Confucian canon, but he applied, and Kishan can correct me, he applied, yeah, and so they mentioned that there was some sort of relationship to him. But what I know is that Joshik or Namyang did not get accepted or did not pass examination. I'm not sure it's 100% true or not, but we know that it did not
It's Korean
examination.
examination. Yeah.
Yeah, he did not pass or he did not qualify. It doesn't matter. What I know is that when that happened, he went back down to the Jinju area. Now he is not from this area originally. He's from another area in Korea, but he moved there. Okay, and so I know I'm like, okay, he didn't some sort of follow the traditional route of going, but he went into this area after studying all these years. Now, if you understand Confucianism, and now I understand it, right? There is a lot, there's ways of teaching Confucianism, and in any other philosophy or anything like this, Confucianism has four books, main books, right? And everybody needs to study them. The one book of Confucian learning is called the Analects, which is about ethical behavior. Everybody learns from this book. So it's all about ethical behavior. Then there's Mencius, which is about human nature. Then there's something called the Great Learning Book, which is kind of self-cultivation. And then the Doctrine of the Mean, which is balance. So we know Joshik studied under these four main books. And then there's also under Confucianism, there's five classic books that everybody starts from, right? And there is the I Ching, which is the Book of Change. And then there's the Book of Documents, right, which is about governance and political. The Book of Odes, which is about poems, art, history, social life. And the Book of Rights, right, which is basically defines proper conduct. So we know that Namyang Joshik studied all the original books, okay? And we know that he studied them, and if you trace back his learning, then we know that he learned Confucius learnings, and then from Confucius, he learned also the next version of it, which is Mencius, right? And that following there, right? But then the most important person that came from the research that I did was Zhu Si. Is it Zhu Ki or is it Zhuxi? Kishan? What's that called? What's that name? Zhu Si
Yeah.
Zhuxe,
주자
right? He was
시경 maybe. Yeah.
yeah, from 1130 to 1200 basically. But Zhuxi is the main person. The closest
주자 Korean
Juza. Yeah.
주자.
He was the key in Korea. Okay? He was the key, right? Because he was influenced, Namyang Joshik was influenced by him. Okay? A lot. But if you look at the history of him, right, there's about 200 years or 300 years gap between Zusi and Namyang Joshik. There was so in 300 years in that area in Korea, there was a vacuum of people, and later came other people. There was Jung Myung Ju, Jung Di, John, all came before Namyang Joshik. Okay, but Namyang Joshik was the first person, and this is the key part here, was the first person to take all this learning, Confucius learning, and asked a simple question. And that was like the revelation. The simple question, he goes, okay, we know all this. We learn all this. I learned all this. But the question becomes, how do we apply it? The application of it. Not just studying, but the application of it. right? And maybe this is the biggest invention in Korea, okay, ever to happen, where Namyang Joshik asks the application of all this learning into something for real life, for every day, right? And that was, sacrilegious or extremely bad, or just nobody would even dare think about saying, can we take all these teachings and apply them? They're two different things: theory, practice, theory, practice. Okay? And this is where I'll stop today and say to be continued, because that changes everything, right? Now I realize that something happened in the area of Jinju, in the area of where Namyang was, that changed the DNA of that region, right? Fundamentally. Um, because this person came in with basic, the original teachings of Confucianism, right? And the history of Confucianism and all the great scholars and everybody. And he comes in and he disrupts the system. He says, no, we're going to do something different. We're going to start talking about application. Okay? And if you make this kind of in a funny way, right? And I'm in the discipline of entrepreneurship. So I teach entrepreneurship, I teach all that stuff. So when entrepreneurship was coming into academia, no, everybody laughed at entrepreneurship. The finance, accounting, marketing, operations management all said, oh, entrepreneurship is not a discipline. This is just there. You have no academic rigor. You have no academic theory. You have no original classics. You are young. You have nothing to provide us in academia. And I was in my mind, I was like, it's the same thing. We say we are a discipline because we use the other disciplines like Confucianism and all that stuff, but we are the application of these disciplines. So we are a discipline by itself, right? And that caused a lot of tension, from what I understand, as we continue, between what we call the originals or the traditionalists and what we call the neo-Confucianism of Namyang Joshik in that area. And that's where I started to say, um, I have to write the paper.
Excellent.
I have to write the paper. So I stop here.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much, Ayman.
Hmm.
Your episode 1 is about mystery. Uh,
Hmm.
Episode 2 is about the mystery solving the story. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's truly exciting. How did Jinju become the capital of entrepreneurship in Korea? What was the reason? The number one, was it because of Jisoo Elementary School teacher at the time, or was it due to a special educational curriculum of Jinju Jisoo Elementary School? No, yeah. In the end, the, we late came to discover the influence of Master Nam명조식. Is it right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. He comes after, he is, in American terminology or Western terminology, he was a pioneer.
Okay.
Okay. And pioneers, if you look at them throughout history, are always attacked. When you are a pioneer, nobody welcomes you. They attack you because you're coming into a new era, a new time, new people, new way of thinking, and you're trying to change it. And Namyang Joshik was, I call, a pioneer at that time. And pioneers, he probably had a lot of challenges because he was changing the status quo. type of thing. So,
Okay. So we are even more excited to hear the rest of the story next week. So
good.
you are becoming a true Confucian scholar, yeah, expert in
I'm,
Neo-Confucianism. Yeah.
yeah, we should do a
Dangerous
movie.
Confucius, yeah.
We should do a movie or a cartoon for the babies.
Yeah,
We do a
someday
cartoon.
we can make a drama or movie together. It's
Yeah, for the kids, for a cartoon every Sunday morning. The Korean and everybody watches all the history.
okay. To help
Yeah.
Korean to better understand, I will summarize your story in Korean. Yeah.
Okay. All right then, Kishan.
Yeah,
Bye.
okay, then see you
Any
next.
questions? No, I can stay for a couple of minutes. You want anything else?
Anyone, any question, any comment to Ayman Tarabish? No, then I will summarize what you
Okay.
talked in Korean and that we are going to discuss. See you
All
next
right.
week, Sama.
Bye bye.
Okay, bye bye. Thank you, Ayman. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Ayman. Mm.
Bye.